Let's jump right into this explainer because today we are tackling a deeply frustrating and honestly incredibly common dynamic that sneaks into almost every relationship. We're talking about that heavy, awkward, silent distance that hangs around after an argument is supposedly resolved. If you have ever felt that chilling disconnect with your partner even after all the yelling has stopped, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to break down the hidden mechanics of exactly why this happens using some really brilliant psychological frameworks, and trust me, this is going to fundamentally change how you look at the aftermath of your conflicts. Seriously, we have all been there, right? The active argument is officially over. Maybe someone finally said, "I'm sorry," or maybe you both just agreed to drop it and move on. And yet, that heavy tension is just sitting there in the air. The house is quiet, but it's that loud, uncomfortable kind of quiet. You kind of find yourself thinking, wait, the fight is over, so why are you still mad? Or honestly, maybe you're the one who's still harboring that frustration, even though logically you know the conflict is supposedly put to bed. It's so confusing. You want to reconnect, but it literally feels like there's an invisible brick wall standing right between you and your partner. What we're really looking at here is the stark contrast between the logical resolution of a fight and the actual, uncomfortable, emotional reality you're left sitting in. On the one hand, you've got the logical end, right? Apologies are said, a compromise is hammered out, the facts are sorted. Check, check, check. But then, there's the emotional reality. That cold distance. That lingering, prickly anger. That overwhelming feeling of just not wanting to sit next to them on the couch. We so often mistake the logical end for the emotional end. But actually, scratch that. We completely forget that human beings don't just switch off their feelings like a light switch just because a compromise was negotiated. Now, what's really wild about this specific silent aftermath is that it's not just some quirky flaw unique to your relationship. It is a massive shared experience among millions of partners all over the world. Seriously, whenever experts bring this up online, it goes absolutely viral because so many couples are dealing with this exact same awkward, chilly distance, even when nobody is actively fighting. So if you're dealing with this, you are absolutely not alone. Literally millions of people go to sleep at night feeling like they are miles away from the person lying right next to them, completely baffled as to why the tension is still there when the fight is supposed to be in the rearview mirror. Experts actually have a specific scientific name for this exact phenomenon. They call it emotional residue. Basically, it's that lingering resentment that sticks around after a fight is logically over, but emotionally totally unresolved. Think about it kind of like a physical spill. If you spill a sugary, sticky drink on the kitchen floor, and you just do a quick swipe with a dry paper towel, logically, the puddle is gone, right? But if you walk over it, your shoes are going to stick to the floor. The residue is still there. It's the exact same thing in relationships. If you don't actually clean up the emotional mess of a conflict, that sticky, uncomfortable residue gets left behind, and it totally contaminates your connection. And the scary thing is, this residue operates completely silently, manifesting in three really damaging ways. First off, it happens without any active argument. No yelling, no slamming doors, it's just a quiet killer. Second, it creates this awful cold distance. You suddenly go from being intimate partners to feeling like polite roommates just awkwardly passing each other in the hallway. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, it masks deeply unresolved emotional pain. The surface might look calm, but underneath, somebody is still hurting. That logical apology you guys exchanged, it didn't actually soothe the emotional wound that was inflicted during the fight. So this naturally leads us to a pretty big question. What exactly is happening beneath the surface to create all this lingering resentment? If we aren't fighting, how does the residue just keep growing? What's the fuel for this silent fire? Well, to fix this habit that's honestly destroying couples, we need to zoom in and look really closely at the micro-level interactions that happen in the hours and the days after a supposedly resolved disagreement. The answer actually lies in the buildup of what we call micro-resentments. These are tiny, completely unaddressed grievances that just pile up during those quiet moments. You know the ones. It's that slight eye roll when they ask you to do a chore, or sending a super short one-word text message, or literally just physically turning away from them in bed. Because the main fight is officially over, you feel like you don't really have permission to bring up these small hurts. So what do? You swallow them. But here's the thing. They do not disappear. These micro-resentments join forces with that emotional residue, and together they build a highly toxic, totally invisible barrier right between you and your partner. Let's look at how these seemingly insignificant moments really compound over time. Let's say on day one, you have a minor, kind of unresolved disagreement. Fast forward to week one, An apology happens, sure, but it feels logically forced, like you're just checking a box rather than actually connecting emotionally. Then we hit month 1. Because that emotional residue was never cleared out, that cold distance has literally become a silent habit. You've basically just adapted to the tension. This timeline perfectly illustrates how a relationship slowly drifts apart. It's almost never one huge explosive event. It's this gradual, unchecked freezing of affection over weeks and months. Now, since we cover a lot of relationship dynamics here, you're probably already familiar with relationship expert John Gottman. To fully grasp the psychology of what's happening, we're going to rely on his foundational concept of the emotional bank account. If you want to understand why relationships either thrive or completely fail, this is the master framework. Gottman essentially says that every single couple shares this invisible bank account, but instead of money, it holds emotional currency. Every single interaction you have with your partner affects the balance of this account. And understanding how that balance fluctuates is the absolute key to seeing why emotional residue is just so incredibly dangerous. It works like this. Think of moments of true resolution, deep connection, active listening, genuine affection. All of those are emotional deposits. On the flip side, that lingering resentment and those sneaky micro-resentments, those are emotional withdrawals. And here is the absolutely vital lesson. You know that awkward, cold distance you maintain when you're harboring emotional residue? That acts as a constant, ongoing series of withdrawals. Every single day you sit in that icy silence, you are actively draining the account. And when you leave that emotional residue unchecked, those invisible micro-withdrawals silently drain your relationship's connection down to absolutely zero, a zero balance. Guys, this is relationship bankruptcy. When your emotional bank account hits zero, you have no buffer left, none. Suddenly, every minor inconvenience feels like a massive personal attack. This is exactly why you see couples suddenly break up over something ridiculous, like unwashed dishes. Spoiler alert, it was never about the dishes. It was the fact that their emotional bank account had been completely drained to zero by months of silent, unresolved emotional residue. So what do we actually do about this? To stop silently eroding your connection, you have to completely shift your approach. First, you've got to recognize the residue. Just call it out gently. Say something like, hey, I know we apologized earlier, but I'm honestly still feeling a bit disconnected. Second, do not settle for just a logical end. If the facts are settled but your feelings aren't, the fight isn't truly over, period. And third, you have to actively repair the emotional connection. That means making deliberate emotional deposits. Go for a long hug, have a really affirming conversation, or just do a genuine check-in. You have to clean up that sticky emotional residue so you can rebuild your bank account balance. I really want you to absorb this core takeaway. Let it sink in. It is not the explosive fights that are destroying relationships. It's the silent habit of leaving emotional residue unchecked. We put so much focus on learning how to argue better, but almost no focus on how to heal better after the argument. But as you can see, that silence, that's where the real damage is being done. Understanding this dynamic is really the first step to truly clearing the air. So I want to leave you with this question to reflect on. Is the silence in your relationship louder than the fights? If that cold distance is stretching on for days after an argument, it is absolutely time to start addressing the emotional residue. Start making those emotional deposits today, clean up those unresolved feelings, and break that silent habit before it breaks your relationship. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this brings a whole new level of clarity and connection to your partnership.